With his contract set to expire this summer, Kylian Mbappe is believed to have told PSG he will leave at the end of the season. It's all but confirmed that he will join Real Madrid. This leaves PSG with a huge issue. How do they replace Mbappe? Last week, we looked at how Madrid fit in Mbappe. In today's video, we discuss how PSG replaced their superstar. Alright, let's talk about Kylian Mbappe then, and more importantly PSG in today's video. We'll start with Mbappe. Why is Mbappe so important to PSG, Harry?
Well, I mean, he's their main man, isn't he? He scores all their goals.
It's their only man.
Yeah, gets all their wins, and without him, I think it's an interesting one, because obviously a lot of people would say without him they'll struggle. But obviously it's a tough one to tell, because yes, he is one of their only goal scorers. He is the only player that drags them across the line. But at the end of the day, that's because everything at PSG is about getting the ball to Mbappe.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one to say, but the facts don't lie. Mbappe scores all of PSG's goals and wins them all their games. Yeah,
so 38% of PSG's Ligue 1 goals this season have come from Kylian Mbappe. No teammate has more than 6. I believe it's Randall Colomouani on 6 and then Vitinha on 5 of the next 2, which, considering Mbappe's on 21, that is quite a gulf in numbers. Now, of course, as you say, the team is built around providing Mbappe with chances and getting goals for Kylian Mbappe. But still, that is a huge disparity, because Mbappe's not played every game this season. He came off at half-time in the Monaco game, and notably they went on to draw that 0-0. So I do think they have a big problem in terms of how do they replace a huge presence in that front line? How do they replace someone who they know if they get the ball in behind to, 9 times out of 10, he's going to find the back of the net? That's the biggest issue for PSG now. Obviously, this doesn't have to be solved in the transfer market. We're going to discuss those sort of options. We're also going to talk about what options they do have in the transfer market. But let's first look at the squad then without Mbappe. You can see it on the screen now. It's not a bad squad, actually. I think I was quite surprised when I looked through this and saw the depth. So let's talk about goalkeepers. I think they're fairly sorted there. Donnarumma and Arnau Tenas. Tenas, 22 years old, going to learn under Donnarumma for a few years. I don't know if he'll ever get a starting berth at Paris, but still a more than comfortable backup. And of course, Donnarumma's still a very good goalkeeper. Then you've got the back line. I think they're a little weak at left back. There's only really Nuno Mendes. They've used Lucas Hernandez out there, who is competent there, but I think you'd rather have him starting in the back too. And then in that defensive partnership, you've got Marquinhos, Skriniar, Kimpembe, Beraldo, and of course Lucas Hernandez. So centre-halves, they're kind of sorted on, I think. I mean, you've got a senior partnership there with Marquinhos and Skriniar. Kimpembe, I know, spent a little bit of time out injured, I believe, this season. So they've got options there, though. Right back, they're fairly fine. Nordi Mukiele and Achraf Hakimi. I think they're both fine options. Defensive midfield, I think there's one I'd sell here. I mean, is there anyone I've mentioned so far that you think PSG should sell?
I mean, no, I think it's a healthy rotation. I don't think it's too big of a squad so far. It's one of those where it's pretty balanced. You've got a lot of players there who are very high quality, but you've also got a lot of players there that are probably happy to not play week in, week out, and it's a decent balance at the moment.
Fair enough. In defensive midfield, they've got Mamo Ugarte. Now, there's going to be a lot of question marks around him, because I think he's played very well in Ligue 1 this season, but I think there's a lot of question marks around his European performances, and we're going to talk about why perhaps they should bring in someone else. Danilo Pereira, I think, should go this summer. He's covered at centre-half. He's covered in defensive midfield. I don't really see a future for Danilo Pereira, so
yeah, he's not great.
No, I think you can get some money there if he goes to Saudi. And Zaire Emery as well can play defensive midfield. I think you want him pushing a little higher, though. Often he's played a bit better when put higher. I should say as well, in terms of contract expiring this summer, Levin Kurzawa, his contract expires. I don't think that's a huge issue. Neither is Keylor Navas or Sergio Rico's contract expiring. I don't think that's a huge problem for PSG. In terms of central midfielders, you've got Vitinha, who's their 3rd top goal scorer this season. You've got Fabian Ruiz, who came from Napoli, of course, I believe. No, not Napoli. Lazio. Was it Napoli? It was Napoli, wasn't it? Yeah. And then Carlos Soler. I think I've got a few questions around Carlos Soler. I think he's a good player. Is there a potential to sell there, though?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen him do much this year. And I thought a move to PSG would have been very good for him. I thought it would, maybe get him firing, see him in double digits for numbers, that kind of reap rewards. But we haven't really seen much of that. And it's a bit disappointing.
Yeah. I think he's definitely a sellable asset. Then you got Kang In Lee. And I think, again, I wouldn't sell him. I think he's a very high potential player, but they've just not used him. It didn't make any sense to bring in him and Xavi Simons and then loan out Simons and keep Kang In Lee. I didn't get that. I think Simons is a better player, and that's being proven by him tearing it up at Leipzig. So for me, next season, I'd loan out Lee and I'd bring Xavi Simons straight into the first team. He's a brilliant player. He's been incredible for Leipzig this season. He's only going to make PSG better. If there's going to be anyone that replaces Mbappe's goals, it's going to be Xavi Simons. And I think that opens up then with Simons coming back a question as to whether they actually need to replace Mbappe. Because in terms of wingers, you've got Bradley Barcola, who can play on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. You've got Dembele, who can play either flank as well. And you've got Asensio, who can cover the right-hand side. Now, with Simons, who can play out wide as well, Muani, who's played on the left a few times this season, is there really a need to directly address Mbappe leaving?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting question to have, because obviously Mbappe is a free contract. Also, I know they'll earn a lot of money off the fact they don't have to pay his ridiculous contract.
I was going to say,
but
200 million a week. Nice.
But it's the fact is they're not getting any money for him, so it's not like the usual transfer where, oh, that's all right, because they'll get 200 million and they can go spend that elsewhere. They can't do that.
Because they cocked it up. They should have sold Mbappe last summer.
Exactly. So they are going to have to deal with the fact they can't really go out and buy another world-class replacement. So maybe there is a question there to not go out and spend loads of money and to use what we got.
Well, they could buy a world-class replacement. They would have to sell, I think, a few assets. I can't imagine their FFP is in a very healthy position. It never is. But equally, they could just exploit that and be out of Champions League for a few years. And then deal with the consequences afterwards. But
or mark UEFA off.
That could also happen. Then in terms of strikers, I think they're fairly sorted. They're Goncalo Ramos and Randal Kolo Muani. So in terms of what they need to address then, now, I know I said centre-half is covered, but I think bringing in a young centre-half to learn could be a good option.
It is a very ageing backline.
Because you've got Marquinhos, who's 29, Skriniar, who's in his 30s, Kimpembe, I think, is 26.
Yeah,
around that sort of age. Ronaldo's 20, and then Lucas Hernandez, late 20s as well. So everyone is sort of pushing now that 30 bracket. And while we're not Leonardo DiCaprio, players do tend to go over the hill at 30, and you could definitely start to see those players dropping off the next few years. Put it this way, I don't see Marquinhos and Skriniar as a Champions League winning backline. I don't think that's a controversial statement. So young centre-half could be something to bring in. There's also the issue at left-back, where if you want to use Lucas Hernandez as a centre-half, you need to bring in a left-back to compete with Nuno Mendes. So we're going to talk about left-backs and who they could bring in that role. Then the defensive midfielder. Now, Ugarte in Europe has looked very exposed. I don't think he's been very good or very comfortable in possession. He looks to panic a bit on the European stage. He's more than comfortable in Ligue 1, but maybe bringing in someone a little bit more defensive to compete with him could be a good idea. And then if we did want to look at a left wing, got a couple options on that flank. So let's start from the back then at centre half. And first, we're going to talk about Leny Yoro. Do you know much about Leny Yoro, Harry?
Not really, no.
No.
It's so great flag, but I think the big thing that you said about that backline, and I think it's right for the whole team, is that it's one of those where it can waltz League One. That 11 that we've just run through
it's
absolutely waltzes League One. You know what I mean? But when it gets into Champions League, that side don't get in the quarters for me. I don't think it will challenge, and that's the.
I guess we'll see, won't we?
That's the big thing they need to look at. Is that okay? They're good for their domestic league, but that's piss easy. What is that next step up to find so they can challenge for Europe?
I should note as well, we're recording this before their Sociedad game on Tuesday night. This comes out on the Wednesday, so Sociedad could have knocked PSG out by now.
Almighty comeback.
But you would expect PSG will be in the quarterfinals. So depending on their draw, they could definitely get semi-finals this year. I don't really see them, as you say, competing for the final though. I don't see them winning the Champions League this year. So let's talk about Leny Yoro then. So he plays at Los Lille this season. He's 18 years old and he has been incredible this season. He's helped out by the fact he is incredibly tall. I think 6'2", 6'3", so he's an absolute unit. Brilliant in the air. And looking at his numbers, he is, as I say, very good in the air. 62.5% of his aerials are won. That ranks in the 63rd percentile for all defenders across Europe, which is fairly strong. Passes completed, he ranks in the 83rd percentile. Interceptions, 83rd percentile. He's very good at getting in front of balls, using his lanky and long frame to get across the ball. So there's a ball there, he's going to win it because he's absolutely huge. And I think that comfortability on the ball at such a young age is a big strength of his. I think that's going to be interesting to see how he develops as a centre half. And I think learning under Marquinhos and Skriniar, he would develop into one of the best centre halves in the world. So for me, Leny Yoro would be a great option. In terms of price, I think you'd be looking at about 40-50 million, which is a lot to pay for an 18-year-old. But given it's in the domestic league, they may be able to scam Lille.
Yeah.
They did with Renato Sanchez.
Deal.
Maybe.
Player swaps going.
Who would you trade?
Give him Danilo Pereira.
I don't know if they'll take him. I think you're better off trying to sell him to Saudi and use the money to buy Yoro. But
good player, very good player. And I think, again, we speak out that height. If you're thinking Europe-wise in the future, what a weapon from corners. Look at Liverpool. Every time they put the ball in Van Dijk's there, that can change a game. And I know it's thinking very far ahead to him, thinking of, Lenny scoring goals in Champions League semi-finals, but it's a thought to have.
Yeah, and obviously buying him now while he's younger, the price is going to be a lot lower than if you were to buy him even in a year's time. I think, I say 40, 50, or maybe even 30. I think you can get him as low as that. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how desperate Lille are to hold on to him, but I think 30 million for an 18-year-old wouldn't be too bad for them. I think it'd be looking more towards the 40, 50 mark, but I think they'd take a slightly lower price. And I think PSG will be signing a very good centre-half for the next sort of decade. So that's not a bad investment. And yeah, I think this is going to be the interesting thing, isn't it? That battle between, do they go and replace Mbappe directly by bringing in an exciting winger, an exciting attacker, someone who will get the goals? Or do they disperse the funds evenly across the squad and build up a brilliant team? That's the thing they've got to measure this season. Looking at left-back then, because I think this is the more key area. And I think I've come up with a brilliant name here. And that name is Pervis Estupiñán. I think one of the best left-backs in the Premier League this season when he's been fit. And I think he would add a lot to this PSG backline because he offers that same attacking intent that is offered by Nuno Mendes, but with a little bit more defensive assurance. Now, his tackles and percentage of dribblers tackled and block numbers, they're not high, because he's not a very defensive fullback. But if you look at his assists, 86th percentile for fullbacks across Europe, 86th percentile for touches, 83rd percentile for shot creating actions, which is a very, very high considering that'll compare him against wingbacks who are going to get forwards a lot more than he can. 91st percentile for progressive passes, 83rd percentile for progressive carries. These numbers are very, very high. He ranks in the upper echelons in all of these categories. The same for ball recoveries, 95th percentile, 88th percentile for carries. So he's very good at holding onto the ball, very good at bringing out the pitch through either passing it or carrying it with his feet. He's a very good player.
Yeah,
and he would add a lot to that PSG build-up phase.
Yeah, he's definitely a player as well. I think you can pry away because he's one of those that needs that step up now because he's in a team where they're a bit inconsistent. They're not quite at the very sharp end of European football. PSG, they're striving for that. I think you can tempt him pretty easily if you're going to say you're going to come play in the Champions League every week. And
I think Brighton are ready for him to go. They've just signed Ezequiel. Is it Ezequiel Barco they signed? I can't remember if that's his name or not. But the Argentine left back at Boca, who's been an absolute revelation on Football Manager this year, they've signed him for like 14 million. So it feels like they've already replaced Pervis Estupiñán. They're already ready for him to leave. I think you will be fending off some interest. I think there will be big clubs interested. But I think PSG could get him sort of on the sly this summer just because other clubs have got their attention elsewhere. Now, I would have said maybe a Liverpool, but Robertson's still got a few years left at the top and they're going to be having their attention focused on the fact that they've got Van Dijk and Salah with a season left in their contracts and they haven't got a manager. So, and I don't really see City making a move for him. They don't even play with a left back really. They play with a centre half out there. So I don't think you're going to face too much competition for a signature unless Chelsea are desperate to sign another Brighton player. Now, in terms of a price tag, I don't think you could be looking at that much. I initially thought, this is going to break records for fullbacks. Until I found out Lucas Hernandez moved to Bayern Munich for 80 million.
That's crazy.
And I was stunned. So I don't think you're going to be breaking that limit. At least I think it was Hernandez, and I think it was 80. But because I was looking at it yesterday while doing some research, and then I think Estupiñán, I think a 40, 50 million again mark. Yeah. I think you can prime away.
Brighton take that because they made a massive profit.
Yeah, they signed him for what, 20 million, maybe 15 million, something like that. So a really good return on investment. They may be looking at a slightly higher price. We saw what they did with Caicedo, absolutely robbing Chelsea. We've seen what they did with Alexis McAllister, who I think would have gone for a lot more if it wasn't the last year of his contract. Robert Sanchez, and then what they're going to do with Evan Ferguson. So yeah, they are very good, Brighton, at getting their money's worth. So I think it'd be a great addition. Now, defensive midfield, I want to talk a little bit about Manuel Ugarte because I really rate Ugarte. I think he was one of the best players in that Sporting side last season. I think Ruben Amorim had him playing some really good football. Now, I do think, though, there are some worries about his defensive numbers, about his numbers in Europe. He's really struggled, I think, in the Champions League this season. Now, I did initially look at his replacement at Sporting because they do fit very stylistically, very similar, Manuel Ugarte and Morten Hjulmand, which I think is a testament to Sporting's recruitment. They managed to bring in pretty much the same player. But I'm actually looking at an ex-Sporting player here, because I think he'd suit them better. It's João Palhinha. One of the best players Fulham's best player this season. Without much research, that's fairly obvious. I think, obviously, he's been touted with a move to Bayern Munich. They were trying desperately for his signature last summer. Quoted around the 40-50 million pound mark again. I don't know why that's the number for every transfer, but that is what he was linked out for Bayern Munich. Obviously, he has signed a new contract, so Fulham may have to, will want a little bit more potentially, but I think his numbers are really interesting. So, obviously, as you can see on screen with the profile, his non-pen XG, all that sort of stuff, all his attacking numbers are very low, but then his tackles, 99th percentile, blocks 92nd percentile, and interceptions 88th percentile. He is the perfect defensive midfielder. Now, I think there are some concerns about his ability to play with the ball. However, I will caveat that with the fact that this Fulham side don't play possession-based football. If the ball drops to him, it's lump it long. Where is Rodrigo Muniz? Where can I find Harry Wilson with a pass? It's not, let's try and play it around with Zaire Emery and Fabian and Vitinha and then try and create chances for some of the best attackers in Europe. So there's going to be a big difference stylistically. But I just think having Palhinha in there makes him a little bit more secure when playing in these big knockout ties. If you look at all the best teams in Europe right now, they all have one thing in common, and that's a very good defensive midfielder. Why did Manchester City win the Champions League? Was it Erling Haaland? No, it was Rodri. And in the final, that was proven true. So buying a big defensive midfielder might be huge. Now, I think Ugarte's got to be trusted with the future. So maybe they don't want to bring in João Palhinha and upset Manuel Ugarte, but Ugarte's not been good enough in Europe this season. Now, another thing I saw spoken about was Frenkie de Jong. But I have worries about his ability to play at the base of the midfield. I think he's a brilliant playmaker, a little bit too aggressive though. So I think João Palhinha suits that defensive ability well. How highly do you rate Palhinha?
Yeah, no, he's a very good player, and he's similar to Stupinian. He's another player that needs that step up. Now, he's better than Fulham. He's so much better than Fulham. He can't be playing with Tom Kearney in there. It needs to go. But he's a very, very good player. Loves a card, which I think is one of his only cons. Because that could cost you a lot, especially in knockout football. If he's picking up a yellow every game, then he's not going to play for you. But he's a very, very good player, very, very good at what he does. And realistically, again, he is that step up that they need if they want to challenge in the big games.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, now let's have a look at the Mbappe replacement. This is the bit of the video where everyone's been waiting for. There's left wingers. Who's going to come in directly and replace Mbappe? Now, I've seen Rafael Leao is a name that I've seen banded around a lot. I'm not sure on Leao. I think he's very good, but his numbers in Serie A haven't been impressive this season. And so I'm slightly concerned that he doesn't bring what you need to in an Mbappe replacement. I think he's a good player, but is he one of the best in the world? I'm not sure. I'm not sure he meets that category. So I'm going to suggest a different name. Now, I've got two options because one is very, very expensive, but perfect. And one is a bit of a gamble, but you might be able to get him on loan or on a cheap. So let's talk about the first one then. It's a Georgian man. And no, it's not. It's not the Mets striker, Mikhail Tadze, or whatever his name is. It's Ivica Kvaratskhelia. He is bloody good at football. He's really good. Yeah, his non-pen goals and non-pen XG are slightly low, but his shots total being in the 96th percentile for wingers across Europe is very good. Shows he gets into great positions, he does get shots away. I think his numbers have been slightly lowered this season. Last season, obviously, they were incredible. And I think that's led to some people saying he's having a bad season this year. I don't think he's having too bad a season, though. Shot creating actions, ranking in the 88th percentile. His assists aren't too high, but they're neither Kylian Mbappe's. And so I don't think that's too much of an issue. And then his numbers in terms of dribbling, and beating his player down, beating the fullback for pace. It's incredible. Progressive carries at 97th percentile. Successful take-ons, 94th percentile. He loves to run at a player. And then touches in attacking penalty area in the 90th percentile. So in terms of someone who provides a direct goal threat, who can take a man on, who can get into that position by himself, but also finish off chances that are created for him, I don't think you get much better than Ivica Kvaratskhelia.
Yeah, no, he is a phenomenal player, and he's exactly what they need. You know, they need someone to come in who can replace Mbappe and replace the way that he takes the game by the scruff of the neck and completely controls it. And
but he's also got that star name.
Yeah.
He brings that star quality, and people go, "Oh my god, it's Ivica Kvaratskhelia." people will, it's going to charge a high fee. I think you'll be looking at about £100 million, which is a lot to pay, admittedly.
It's cheaper than last year because Napoli are an absolute mess right now. Yeah. This is the perfect time if you want to pick him up.
Yeah, I think there are also some concerns regarding whether he'll be as good without Victor Osimhen. But I think he'd be able to link up well with Goncalo Ramos and with Randall Colomwani. Well, yeah. But we've not seen a load of him yet. So I think there is some concerns around paying 100 million, but they've got to take the Chelsea model and just pay it. Now, the other option is someone who's been around football a lot longer, someone who's he's had so much promise, but never really executed it. And it's João Felix.
Ooh.
I think, now personally, I come from a biased standpoint, I think João Felix is an incredible, incredible player. So I'm going to just lay out facts and I'll let others make their mind up rather than waxing lyrical about him, because I could go all day with João Felix. But he is one of the most exciting dribblers in the world, and he ranks incredibly highly in terms of his goals this season for Barcelona. So non-pen goals at 95th percentile for his position, 98th percentile for non-pen XG, 99th percentile for shots total. So we just spoke about Kvaratskhelia there and his shots total. He averages he's on 3.33 shots per 90. Just to say on João Felix, that's at 4 shots per 90. So he ranks a lot higher in that than Kvaratskhelia. So while they're both quite close in terms of being in that top sort of 10% of players, there is still such a big gap between them. So Felix is getting a lot of shots away when he plays this season. On top of that, his assist number is quite low, but equally, I think he's not been helped out by the fact that Lewandowski keeps missing chances. That's definitely not helped him out. His shot creating action's a bit low as well, and in terms of progressive passes and carries, he doesn't bring that same ability that Kvaratskhelia does of picking up the ball on the halfway line and carrying it 40 yards and suddenly creating a chance. But if you can get him in the final third, if you can get him in that end zone, he is incredible. Touch attacking penalty area, up at the 86th percentile. Successful take-ons 1.94, nowhere near Kvaratskelia's numbers, but that's Kvaratskhelia. It's a very high bar to compare to. And considering I think Felix is going to be a very different price tag, because he's about alone at Barcelona this season. He's clearly not favoured or liked by Simeone, and I don't think he's going to return to Atleti after he celebrated against his parent club. So I think they'd be happy to let him go on the slightly cheap. I think you could get him at 40, 50 million, if I'm being honest. I really rate João, but Atleti will be hoping to cut their losses this summer. And I think they could do that with a fairly cut price deal. So they're the difference in price tags, because Felix, you could even try for a loan, in which case it's 12 months. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You look again next summer when your FFP is going to be lower, because by that point, if you don't spend a lot this summer, then FFP will be viable again, and spending will be viable again next summer. But obviously, Kvaratskhelia brings that immediate star quality, that world-class replacement for Kylian Mbappe. So there's a lot of options for PSG. I think if they went for Kvaratskhelia, they can't really address other positions. So that's the big choice, isn't it? It's whether they look at just Kvaratskhelia or whether they want to do more. Because if they were to bring in João Felix, perhaps they can then look at other options. Because I think for PSG, it's worth investing in their future. But what would you do then with the 5 options presented? Who would you prioritise? Who would you target? Who would you sign?
I think you prioritise the Mbappe replacement, and I'd be torn between Felix and Kvaratskhelia, just because I think they're both very, very good players. I think you can picture it. Felix just tearing up Ligue 1 in a PSG shirt, scoring goal after goal.
My bigger question is what he does in Europe.
And that's my problem. I think Kvaratskhelia brings you that European impact. He brings you that European standard where he will deliver on the UCL night. Will Felix do that? I don't know. It's a tough one.
In terms of other options, any coming to the forefront of your brain from the off?
The problem is, if they want to go world class, it has to be Kvaratskhelia. There's no, because they're not getting Vinicius.
Well, I was going to say, is Vinicius more viable next summer? Once, is there a potential that Mbappe upsets the apple cart there? We spoke about it in the Mbappe video.
Yeah, maybe.
I think if we're looking at Real Madrid going forwards, they've still got their long-term sights on an Erling Haaland who would play through the middle, Mbappe on the left-hand side and Rodrigo on the right. But where does Vinicius fit into that? Do they play a front 4? And then Bellingham in attack? Yeah. There's no one in defence. They're not going to work.
If Vinicius wants to leave, he will go Premier League, I think.
Well,
it would feel like a backward step for me if he went to Ligue 1 from Real Madrid.
Fair enough. What about a Gabriel Martinelli? Not really performed that well for Arsenal this season.
No. Again, I don't think he brings that European standard, and Arsenal fans will attack me, but I don't think Martinelli performed on the biggest nights in the UCL.
Fair enough.
They lost to Porto last week. Rubbish.
Did he play in that game?
It was rubbish.
Okay. I didn't know whether he started or whether it was Trossard. But yeah, I think it's going to be a big question over this summer as to how they go about replacing Mbappe. Now, the most PSG thing to do would be to just do something really stupid. So what stupid thing do we expect from PSG this summer?
Probably go spend 150 million on someone they really shouldn't.
Maybe like a Moise Caicedo. That would be the most PSG thing. Get Chelsea a return on their investment and end up overpaying for him.
100 million on Deo Upamecano.
Yeah, something really weird like that could definitely happen. Things I've never really spent huge in defensive areas, so we've been in attacking areas. So unless they go and drop 100 million on Julian Alvarez, and they just switch to playing only strikers.
Osimhen.
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Is Victor Osimhen viable? I just think with the interest in him from the Premier League, I don't really see how PSG can compete with that.
Who in the Premier picking him up now?
Chelsea.
Chelsea need to start spending money.
No, it was on Victor Osimhen.
United have got Højlund, City have got Haaland, Liverpool have got Nunez, Arsenal have got no one. They don't need anyone.
They could sign Victor Osimhen.
They could sign Victor Osimhen.
Great option, actually. That'd be really good for Arsenal.
That front three would be disgusting.
Yes. Of Nketiah, Osimhen,
yes.
Saka. But yeah, I think the other question is, do PSG change shape? Now, Enrique, I think, will stick to a 4-3-3. But with Achraf Hakimi and Nuno Mendes, you've got some of the best wing-backs in the world. You could easily play a 3-5-2, get Colomwani and Goncalo Ramos into the same side. Asensio can play attacking midfield. You could even use Dembele as an attacking midfielder. So that's an option. I think he will stick to 4-3-3, and that's why I've enabled suggestions that work in a 4-3-3. But I do think a 3-5-2 would work with this squad. So there's options there for Enrique to think about. I think, though, if I had to make the call, I would say bring in Joao Felix, either on a loan or on a cheaper deal, if possible. Maybe even look at a swap deal, because I'm sure Letty would take someone in that squad. Now, obviously, there's not many people you want to lose, but maybe Carlos Soler. I don't think that's a terrible deal for either party. I'm not sure how Soler would fit with the Simeone just kick people tactic, but maybe he'll be able to be the one creative player in that system. So I think Joao would be who I target this summer. I just don't think Kvaratskhelia is viable. I think he's too expensive for PSG right now. In terms of in other areas, I think Estupinian would be the one I go for, just because Nuno Mendes is very young, and actually bringing in a really quality left back to create chances, link up with Joao Felix on that left-hand side could be really nice. As Felix cuts inside, Estupinian overlaps. That's going to be very good, especially if you've got on the other side Hakimi doing the same. It's going to be very aggressive, but you never know, much work. And Ugarte perhaps dropping in between the centre halves. Maybe then you look at João Palhinha, because he may be able to drop between the centre halves a little better, form a situational back three. There's loads of options for PSG this summer. You feel free to have your say in the comments below. Just think about what we've said in this video. If you disagree massively, comment that below as well. It's all engagement, so help us out. But yeah, there's a lot of questions around PSG this summer, a lot of unknowns, one of which is also the future of Luis Enrique. Does he stay?
Yeah.
You think?
He hasn't done anything wrong.
Fair enough. He's lost Mbappe.
That's not his fault. They should have sold him years ago.
Well, not years, last year.
2 years ago.
Okay. Fair enough. But that is everything for today's video. Anything else to touch on before we sign off?
No.
Okay, perfect. Have your say in the comments below. If you want to keep watching our content, then watch our video from last week where we spoke about Kylian Mbappe to Real Madrid and where he fits. That's going to be covering Harry's face right now, so give it a click. Go and watch it. But that's everything from us today. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.